Dr. Michelle Lloyd. Hello and welcome to Your Pointers for Parents live stream podcast, where we support parents with anxiety as it relates to teens transitioning out of the home after high school, whether they're heading off to the college campus, the military base, or it could simply be residential interdependence. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Lloyd, and I am so excited. I'm unable to express how excited I am about today's guest who will be joining us. Her name is Megan Marie, and she will discuss what it really takes to thrive on the college campus. I mean, as a parent, wouldn't we want to know that? And so it's important for us as parents, you all know, and I know as well, for our teens to make sure that they are doing those things that need to be done and that we're doing those things that need to be done as they're transitioning off and on the college campus. So listen, let me lean in and tell you just a little bit about Megan Marie. She, with 15 years of experience on the college level, Megan's strength and focus are with students who benefit from extra support and frequent check-ins. While many students find this helpful, the students she typically works with have learning differences, students on academic probation and or those who simply need a safe space to share their current college challenges. One of the reasons she finds her work so important and rewarding is because she herself struggled in the past with school and because she has had this unshakable belief in students with varying learning disabilities and learning needs. One of the ways she has encouraged her students is by helping them to adapt to a growth mindset, as well as getting comfortable with asking for help, which we all know that's so very, very important. She has found the two things that were critical for not only college success, but also for overall life. Megan weaves these two things in both her daily sessions and previous teachings with her students. So listen, I want you all to meet her. Let's hear from Megan. Megan, how in the world are you? You doing okay?
I'm great. Hi, everyone.
Well, awesome. I'm so excited you're here. And we have had some previous conversations, and those conversations have been delightful because you have brought a wealth of information. And so I'm super excited that you're here. You know what? Let's just go ahead and just jump into the questions, because I know that there are a number of conversations that I have had as it relates to, of course, teens being on the college campus and them just being successful and thriving. So I am curious to know, like, how can a parent help their teen with this smooth transition onto college life without feeling this overwhelming feeling?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for raising that, Dr. Lloyd. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the intro. Thank you very much. So, having a teen that's about to transition into their first year of college, that's an enormous transition, right? And I want to break up my answer actually into two parts. So my first part is really just acknowledging that with transition of college, it's a big, beautiful journey. Your child is going to have so many amazing experiences. They're going to meet so many new people, from professors to college staff to new peers. If they're living on campus, they're going to be living with a roommate. There's a lot going on there. And even when a lot of it is good, is great, it can still be overwhelming. And so what I really try to stress in the orientations that I've had in the past at prior universities is that really validating to students, it's okay if you do feel overwhelmed, because you have such a community here at yours college, and we're all equipped and we're all prepared to help you, knowing that you may feel overwhelmed, especially your first couple of weeks, that's totally normal. And so I think for parents or guardians or loved ones that are having a student or teen attend college is really just having that conversation early. Like, this is going to be such a great journey for you. I'm so excited for you and thrilled for you about what's to come. But also know it's okay if you feel overwhelmed, because you know what that is? It's growing pains. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Anytime there's a change or, a challenge, even when it's great, you might feel those growing pains, and that's totally okay. So that's one thing, is just really validating that with your teen and your student. The second part is in terms of just practical examples for students so that they do feel overwhelmed once they're going to college, is if they happen to already know where they're accepted, it's about that time, orientation is going to start, they have a copy of their college schedule. I always encourage my students to do a dry run, right? Like, do a dry run, find out where your college buildings are. Like, where does Math 101 take place? Where does your bio class take place, or your chemistry class? A lot of times, and this is just from previous experiences, I've had students, they're in the academic building, I hear a little knock on the door, they're huffing and puffing, they got their backpack on, and they're like, I don't know, am I in the right place? And I'm like, I don't think so, but let me see your schedule. And I help them. I say, oh, you're looking for the Sullivan building. That's actually, you got to go through the quad and past the cafeteria for that. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late. And I say, it's okay. It's the first week. Professors know this, right? But I think in order to kind of tailor that off and kind of smooth that overwhelmingness of trying to find your class the first day, is just to do a dry run. And you can do this, usually during pockets of orientation time, they give you some free time, downtime. Just walk to the building. Just make it a habit once a day. All right, I'm going to find where math is today. I'm going to find where chemistry is today. That way, when you're going to your classes, you know where you're going. And you also know how much time it takes to get there. If you're living on campus from your resident hall, or if you're a commuter, how long it takes from your parking lot spot to get to that building. So I think those are just practical things I try to encourage my students to do, as well as establishing support services early. So, if your teen or student has utilized support services, like Dr. Lloyd mentioned, school did not come easy for me in high school. It was a challenge. I had math dyscalculia. I had a written and oral expression disorder. I don't like that word. But it took me some time to kind of learn what my personal strategies were. But in order to do that, I had support services early in college. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but I think that if you use any support services, get those hooked in right away. So if it's accessibility services, if it's continuing counseling, if it's continuing tutoring, anything you were doing in the high school level, you want to build that over into college and have that be your safety net. And that way, if your student is struggling, you say, hey, don't worry, we have that support already established. It's okay. So those are just some practical things I recommend.
Awesome. And I love it, because I'm listening and I hear you say that, we can almost expect for there to be some concern or stress and those types of things.
Yes.
And that's normal and that's okay.
Yes.
I have even known students to maybe go to the college campus and take some classes at the beginning of the summer.
Yes.
Not only do they know where their classes are when the fall arrives, but they've already met friends.
Yes.
They're comfortable.
Yes.
And so I'm sure you've experienced that as well, where they've gone to maybe a summer session.
Yes. That is an excellent strategy as well, Dr. Lloyd, is if your student's able to do that, that is an excellent way to not only know the academic buildings, but they already know where their cafeteria is. They already know where all the important buildings are, resources on campus. So if you can do that, I think that's an excellent point. Yes.
Fantastic. I know you've mentioned some resources already.
Mm-hmm.
To making sure that they transfer from high school, what they're doing in high school, to the college level as well. Were there any additional ones, or those were really the main ones as far as the tutoring and those types of things? Mm-hmm.
I think the most important part is counseling. And if you had an IEP or a 504 in high school, ensuring that your ensuring that you have your accommodations registered on the college or university level. So a lot of times students will come in and meet with me and they'll say, oh, my high school sent my IEP over to you, or they sent my 504 over to you. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And so it is of your best interest to ensure your high school did indeed send your diagnostics from the past over, or if you happen to have a copy of them, I always encourage that. Take those from your parents or guardians, or if you happen to have a copy as a student yourself, and walk your student over to accessibility services. Sometimes they're called disability services, but whatever that branch is, and make sure they have that documentation so that they can read it, interpret it, and they can provide you academic accommodations if they deem necessary. That way, that first week of college, your accommodations are already in place. We don't want you waiting, right? We don't want the student waiting for it to be a challenge. Like, oh gosh, I thought I had these accommodations in high school, and I just didn't think I needed them anymore because I was on the college level, which I kind of understand. You want to be independent. Your student wants to be, they want to have autonomy now over their learning. They're exercising their independence, and I respect that. But I always tell my students, like, hey, nobody knows you have academic accommodations except for you and the professor. And also, if that's what you need to be successful, let's do that, right? If you don't need to use them, you don't need them. You don't have to use them. They're just there in case you do. The problem and where the difficulty lies is this. It's usually actually around this time of year. It's October. Midterms are happening. The student that had accommodations in high school who hasn't been using them on the college level now, they're a first year student, takes the midterms, they don't do well, and they go, oh gosh, I knew I should have had my accommodations in place. And so now we're doing the backtracking, and that takes time. So that's why I always say, set that up early, get your accommodations in place. It's really, truly critical. And then for counseling too, if you had a student that is on medication, or if you have a student that has counseling and is using it, make sure those services can continue. And also be mindful that your counselor is only licensed in their state usually, right? So if you have a student, like I was in California and I had students coming from the East Coast, their counselor was no longer licensed to practice in California. And so now they're scrambling, like, oh gosh, who can I meet with? You can have the counseling center there at the college or university. But if you really want, to have ongoing therapy or sessions, sometimes it's nice to have somebody outside of the college or university if you want multiple sessions in a week. So I always say, to get that established early as well. Really important.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Awesome response. And I'm thinking, if we're talking about early, are we thinking possibly if school starts in the fall, August, are we thinking maybe midsummer or a few weeks before classes? What define early, please?
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you that you brought that up. So it depends. So if you have a teen that has an IEP or a 504 plan, and you would like for them to have possible academic accommodations, you'll want to go on your school's website and you want to look at their timeline. A lot of times they'll say, hey, we want documentation being sent from July on or August on. So it's important for you to look at the school's website. Like I was thinking of the last school I was at, it was like they wanted documentation after July because they were working with the summer session students still, right? So they have their flow of work and when they have time to evaluate everything and put accommodations together. So I always say, look at the timeline that accessibility offices puts on the school's website. And then for counseling, as soon as you're accepted somewhere out of state, you talk to your current counselor and say, do you happen to know anybody sometimes they can make a referral and say, oh yeah, I actually know somebody over there. Or if not, that's okay too. But I'd say if you can, to start at least those counseling sessions, at least an intake with a counselor in your new state, that would be really helpful. So you can have it, your team can have an established relationship by the time they go to college with that counselor or therapist.
So powerful, so powerful. So help me to understand now about the strategies. We've talked a little bit about the resources and also the expectations that, we can just expect that, we could be overwhelmed, us and our teens, as they're heading off to the college campus. Now, the strategies, what strategies can I encourage my teen to use to manage their time effectively? Listen, I was mentioning earlier, I use about 2 time management systems. And so but to manage that time effectively between academics and social life and self-care, I mean, some of us, we're still, making sure we're crossing T's and dotting I's as it relates to that. So what can I do to encourage my team, please?
Yeah. So for effective management of time, typically what I do with all my students is, they have a copy of their college schedule, right? So typically when I sit down with my student, I say, let's go ahead and pull up your calendar. Typically they already might have that on whatever their school uses. So they might use Canvas. They might use Blackboard, for example. Typically or it might be in their student portal. So essentially what I do is I'll say, let's just make our personal one. So I'll say, let's just create it in Google Sheets, or we can do it in a planner. I really like Google Sheets, where you put all the days of the week at the top, the times on the bottom, and I have the student plot all their class times in. And then I have them, for encouragement, for going to professor office hours, I have them put in when the professor office hours are. And I say, you kind of want to treat this as a class. I encourage you to go at least once a week to introduce yourself to your professor, even if you don't have a question. That's actually the best time to go. Because a lot of times students are like, I don't know how to ask this. And it's like, if you just go to the class and say, hi, I'm excited to be in your class. I had a question about the lecture today, or you brought up this really interesting point. Just want to stop by and say hi. I was in the building today. Professors love that. So I put that in the schedule. I then ask the student, what other commitments do you have? Are you working? Okay, you're working. All right, what days are you working? We'll put that in the calendar. Are you in a student club? Are you in a student organization? When are your practices? I put that in. Do you have family commitments? A lot of my first generation students, they have family commitments. I had a lot of students travel back home. They live close by. They watch their sister or their brother. Whatever commitment they have, I put it in there so it's a big, beautiful visual aid. And the student can then see their commitments, the things that they have to do, their priorities, and then their other priorities, which is their social life and self-care. Where are we going to fit those in? Because those are just as important, if not important, as your academics and studying in professor office hours, because you need to refuel. So I like putting all those things together, because then students can actually see when their free time is, right? Free time. So I'll say, this is your free time. It looks like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, before classes, before work, before practice. You have a window from, let's say, 8:45 to 10:45, right? Because I know you don't get up before 8. Let's be real, right? Most of my students don't. They're sleeping until 10, right? But we'll just use that as an example. So say, hey, you have from 8:45, 9 to 11 o'clock. That's your library time. So then we build that in. We put that in the calendar, go to the library, right?
Right.
Go. We want to roll out of the bed, get yourself a good snack, get yourself a coffee or a tea or an energy drink, whatever it is, find your spot in the library, and let's use that time to study. So put that in. And then what is it that you look forward to? What is self-care for you? I always ask my students, what do you like to do for fun? Some of them are saying, I just want to shoot some hoops. I say, great, you're going to go down the gym. You can do that. You can, go in with your roommates or your friends and do that. Some students want to go for a run. Some students want to listen to music. Whatever it is, then we put that in. So really I think it's first, like, your students and like a lot of us, we don't really know how much time we have, right? Because there's so much happening all at once. It's hard to keep track. And especially for students, when students say, I receive so many notifications and emails from the school, it's so true. I mean, they have messages coming from Blackboard, from Canvas, from sometimes a lot of schools have their apps, right? If they're, hey, reminder, don't forget, there's an event tonight, then they have their emails, and then they have the student portal. And so it's really hard because you have to kind of check in a bunch of different places. I feel like we all do this, but you have to check a bunch of different places to see what you actually have. And I think to just lay it out on the calendar for students to see is really important. And then I just say, let's print this baby, and we're putting it on your, your resident hall, or putting it in your car, whatever it is, so that they can understand like, hey, this is everything I need to do. And this is the time that I have to study, to refuel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. So good. You all are hearing it right now from our expert, Megan Marie. She's just dropping all of the gems, all of them. I am wanting to shift just a bit to our campus safety. And so, by the way, if you all have any questions, just drop them in the chat. And I'm sure that Megan Marie will be more than willing to respond to your questions. But the campus safety, what should I as a parent know about campus safety, and how can I ensure that my teen is prepared for emergencies?
Yes, great question. So typically, each college or university has a system where you can opt in. And each college and university is different, but they usually have an email notification system or a text opt-in system where if there is some type of emergency, you can opt in to receive those text messages as a parent or as a student. If there's a weather-related emergency or something else. So I encourage you to look into that at your college or university. There's typically a notification system. At least all the colleges I've worked at have had some type of notification system like that. And then in terms of procedures, it is unique also to the university or college. But if you really kind of want to understand the college's procedures in the event of emergency, they usually have all those procedures outlined under campus safety or campus police. And then just in terms of general advice, I tell my students is know the campus police or public safety number and store it in your phone, right? Like you may not ever need it, but in the event you do, it's there in your phone, right? You're just, boop, here I go. I need to make a call. The other thing I try to stress to my students, and as a parent, you can continue to stress this to your students and teens, is that when you're, working late at night, let's say you're an art student, you're in the art gallery working late with a couple of students, you don't finish up your project until 11:30, it's dark out, use the buddy system, right? Don't leave the building alone. Go with one of your classmates or a friend and say, hey, let's walk home together. Let's go ahead and walk to our resident hall together. Now, if you're there alone, let's say you're studying really late at the library, and libraries are open 24 hours a lot of times at campus and universities, and it's midterms, you're there till 1 or 2 or some ungodly hour. That's really late for me. But I know for our students, they're like, yeah, that's my time. I know it. So I get emails like, hey, I'm like, it's 2:45 in the morning, go to bed. But hey, if that's your thing, and if you end up leaving at that time, it's dark out, you don't have somebody with you, like a friend, go ahead and get a campus escort or call public safety. They will be happy to help you get from the library to the parking spot if you're a commuter, or to your resident hall if you're living on campus. So encourage your students, store the public safety number in your phone. Use the buddy system. If you're late and nobody's there, call public safety. They'll give you a ride home. And the other last thing that I always encourage students is just be familiar with the campus layout. Know where public safety is. Know where those emergency blue lights are. It's just good information, and just be aware of your surroundings. I mean, I know it's so hard. We're all on our, a lot of times I'll see students walk into class and it's just like, I don't even know how they're getting to class. They don't even look up. They're just on their phone. But put the phone down and, be aware of your surroundings. So I think as a parent or a guardian or a loved one talking to your teen is, incorporate some street smarts and just buddy system, have the phone number down. If it's late at night, don't, that's what public safety is for. We all want you home safe, and opt into the emergency text system or emergency system that the school offers.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes when our teens are on the college campus, there's maybe a disconnect in the correlation that like crime happens off the campus and it happens on the campus as well, unfortunately. And so I totally appreciate you saying, like, be careful of your, be aware. There's this awareness that's so important.
Oh, yeah.
So crime, talked a little bit about that, safety. All right. So financial management tips. We want to make sure that our teens are not struggling on the college campus as it relates to just finances.
Right.
So what thoughts do you have as it relates to that? Yep. Financial management tips.
Great question. There's a few things that come to mind. The first one that comes to, which I think is somewhat common, is, high school, senior year, summer, they're working a summer job. They come to college with, let's say, X amount of money in the bank. Is really just establishing and talking to your teen about establishing some sort of weekly or monthly budget, and just saying, like, hey, if you have X amount of dollars, and it needs to get you until holiday break, December, if you're on a semester system college, you can only spend this much money per month. And I think just having that conversation really will at least let them know, like, hey, if you go over that, then you might not have enough funds at the end of the semester to get what you need. And speaking of what you need, let's not spend our money on unnecessary things. So, for example, I've had students, I laugh, but it's not funny, but I've had students use their parents' credit card, and they're like, can you talk to them? They're like going out to dinner every night. And I'm like, where are you? I talk to my students. I'm like, where are you going? And they're like, we're going here, we're going there, we're trying this hot spot. And I'm like, your parents aren't gonna let you use your, do this anymore. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like there's a budget, I never had a credit card in college. I was like, hey, you're going with your summer spending money and that's it. So I just, for me, I was like, that's what I got. But I think just creating a plan and for them to be aware is huge. And the unnecessary costs, I think a lot of students do Uber Eats a lot. And it's like, hey, like, I get it. Maybe it's midterms and you need some, takeout food. You're like, hey, I just need a couple of burritos this week to get me through, or whatever it is. And I get it, right? I love burritos too. But I'm like, hey, like, also be mindful. Maybe, we just treat ourselves 1 or 2 times this week. And then once midterms are done, we go back to normal patterns here. So I think just the unnecessary cost is the big thing. And the other thing, which is almost in the same vein, it's not really financial management, although it ties into being financially aware, is that for students that are receiving federal financial aid, you want to be mindful as a parent or a guardian, because there's so much information in the beginning with orientation and classes and majors and roommates. Financial aid information gets lost. Of course, there's the loans and you're signing it and it's FAFSA. But the bigger thing is this. Once your student is there and taking classes, in order to be eligible to continue receiving federal financial aid, your student needs to complete the rate that their school and federal financial aid says that they need to complete, which is 67% of their credits. And they typically need to earn a 2.0. I say that because a lot of times, students and parents aren't really aware of that. And then at the end of the spring, they lose their ability to continue receiving federal financial aid, which is devastating on many, many levels. There's a whole appeal process you can go through called SAP appeal through your school. But I think it's important to mention that because if you're having difficulty in school or classes, it typically won't affect finances and financial aid, but it could. So always have a conversation with your financial aid advisor too, if you end up feeling like you're not going to pass your classes or you need to drop a lot of classes, because that could impact your completion rate and your GPA. Or talk to your advisor. Your advisor knows a lot about that too. I'm not a financial aid advisor, but I had to go through a lot of SAP appeals with students, so it's the only reason why I mention it.
And that must have been just the spirit leading you to just mention that, because many parents may be unaware of that until it's the time have arrived, and then here it is, we see that we're unable to move forward.
Yeah.
And so it would be good if more parents were able to, and students really were able to know that. And I'm uncertain if that's even mentioned when financial aid is talked about, but that there's definitely truth to that's for sure. And then I also hear you speaking about just their honesty is needed, as it relates to that budget, and we as parents, making sure that we're just being upfront and forward as it relates to that budget on a weekly basis. So now, on the college campus, Megan, like there's that social, our students, they're there and we're not there. And so there's this social aspect to college, and friends and roommates, and all conflicts may happen amongst the friends of the roommates. How would you just guide or advise students you've interacted with as it relates to that social aspect?
Yeah. Such an important question to raise, because social connection is key, right? I think that's why, in moments of despair or in moments where we as adults, are in, feeling, having a bad day, we connect, we feel better. So social connection is so key for college students. It's what keeps them there. It's a lot of time which makes them feel connected to the school, to the college, to the university. And it brings them joy. So I'm really happy you raised that. Two things. One is that I always think about this, especially for first year students. There seems to be, especially with social media, this belief that students have that by the end of their first, second, third week, they are just going to be rolling deep with 25 best friends forever, right? Or best buds. And that would be awesome. But I always tell my students, if they come into my office and they're like, I haven't found my people yet. And I'm like, that's okay. It's only week 3. It's going to take time, and that's okay. And I ask them this. Let's think about your best friend. When you met your best friend for the first time, were you automatically friends? Were you automatically best friends? And they'll say no. And I say, right, because to become a friend and a best friend, it's something you earn. And it's something that happens through small interactions that happen over time, right? It's through the how are yous, it's through the getting lunch together. It's seeing a college campus event together. So I like to remind students that friendships take time. It's not what you see on social media. And people may be posting a picture with a lot of people in the background. But I'll tell you, by the weekend too, most people don't have like 4 or 5 best friends, right? They might have some friends. Hey, this person might be a friend. This person might be a friend, but just know it takes time. And I know that's really hard because we're living in such an instantaneous world, right? But I always remind my students, it takes time. Now for roommates are tricky. I've had a lot of students in the past that were once best friends or good friends with their roommates, and now they're no longer friends because due to roommate conflicts. And I think the biggest thing is, in order to avoid big conflicts with your roommate, is to have a conversation early before the conflicts begin, right? So once you know who your roommate is, just say, hey, I'd really love to kind of understand who you are as a person. I'd love to understand, like, are you a quiet person? Because I'm a noisy person. How best do you study? Also talking about day visitors, like, hey, you're a really social person, but I'm not. I like this space to be a place where I can go and kind of have my downtime. And so I think just having those conversations early on, especially with the day visitor, and might I say night visitors, got to be realistic. Set those boundaries early. There will be some compromising. But I think if you can talk about those things before these things happen, at least you know where your roommate stands. And just to have a good, respectful relationship where you're meeting each other's boundaries is really important so that you can avoid those conflicts later down the road.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. I'm unable to, I'm uncertain if I could have even articulated that as great as you just did. Megan, thank you so very much. And oh my goodness, such an impactful session. I mean, you talked about resources and accommodation IEPs and starting early to get that. And you talked about printing out your commitments, and then that way you're able to place all of those on a calendar. You talked about the opting in and making sure that, of course, even as a parent, that's pivotal for me, because if my daughter's on a college campus, then of course, if a crime has taken place, if the weather is bad, by golly, I would want to know. And then also knowing about just the SAP appeal, and that could be moved in on for a parent who is just becoming aware of the whole FAFSA, and then that needing to be up to speed in order to get additional aid. And this is the first I've heard of this best friend strategy. This and those small interactions happening over time. I love that. And that is going to help our parents, and even me as I'm talking to my daughter when she goes off in the fall, as it relates to her interactions. And then interviewing your roommate. I mean, just to make sure that you all are on the same page and are able to see eye to eye throughout that longevity together throughout the year. That's so powerful. Megan, thank you so much for being here. Listen, if our listeners have any questions at all, how can they reach you? Please share.
Yes. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at inspiration.coaching.ed@gmail.com. You can also visit me at inspiration, ED on the ed -coaching.com. I have my email and contact information there as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Lloyd. This has been, I'm really grateful for you, for this platform and sharing this information to teens and parents. And I think it's great work, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. You're so welcome. And thank you. And we have just had great conversations since we've met, and still are. So thank you so very much. And for our listeners, if you all are wanting to re-listen to this powerful information, please know that we are on Instagram at Pointers for Parents. That way. And also, if you'd like to ask any questions for future guests, then please feel free to do that as well. You can click on the link in the show notes. And then, of course, we will be right back here on next Tuesday. So again, Megan Marie, thank you so very much for providing this expert advice. And to our listeners, thank you so very much. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Take care. Goodbye. Pointers for Parents Live podcast. Why should you enroll in the Ultimate Transition Success Program? Well, the modules, the interactive implementation-based modules within the program will teach you about yourself and your teen, and the new relationship that you and your teen will have both before and after transition day.